This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Choose the most unusual matches. Choose the best of the WWF. Choose wrestling's biggest, smallest and strongest. Choose Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Roddy Piper's greatest hits, and wrestling's bloopers, bleeps and body slams. Choose George the Animal Steele. Choose the Ken Patera story. Choose the life and times of Captain Lou Albano. Choose the Hulkamania series. Choose the Ultimate Warrior. And choose Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. Choose WWF World Tour, Smack 'em Whack 'em, and UK Rampages 91, 92 and 93. Choose a journey back in time. Choose Seen Your Video. It's time for everyone to dust off the VCR and plug it back into the television set as we take a trip into the Coliseum Home Video Vault with your host, Rory McNamara.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to Senior Video episode 12. My name is Rory McNamara and I am back once again to root around the attic for the very best the home video classics section of the WWE Network has to offer. As always, I have invited somebody up in the attic to help me with this task, and today to somebody making his debut appearance here on Senior Video, but most definitely not his debut appearance here on the Place to Be Nation Wrestling Network. You can hear him on NWA Crock and Roll, you can hear him on Chicken Salad, you can hear him on Highway to the Impact Zone, you can hear him on 5,000 other things I have no doubt forgotten. His name is Sean Kidd. Sean, welcome to the Senior Video Attic.
Hey, good evening, Rory. Pretty much you can hear me on everything, so I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but really happy to be here. This is one of those podcasts that I love listening to that's kind of in my wheelhouse. We're going back to the Coliseum days, and just really happy to be here tonight to talk about what we're going to talk about.
That's a very good start, Sean. When I have guests on here, normally I will get them to introduce their wrestling fandom, but anybody listening to this show has heard that from you many, many times. So a specific question to kick us off, and that is the topic we're discussing here, and we do every month on Senior Video, and that is Coliseum Video itself. We've looked at some of the early batches. We'll be doing a few more of those as we go, 85, 86. Were you right there at the time for the first batch of Coliseum videos? Did you pick them up later? Did you try and collect them? Do you have some of your own stashed away in the attic? What's your relationship, if that's the right word, with Coliseum videos?
So I really got into wrestling around 85, 86. Obviously, on my podcast, I'm following 85 Crockett, but I started watching WWF first, and I was familiar with it based on it being on USA Network. The first match I ever saw on USA Network, I think, was a match between Tito Santana and Bob Orton on primetime.
That's not a bad start.
Yeah, so that was the first match I ever saw, and that was early 86. So again, I'm revisiting 85 now, but I really didn't get into stuff until 86. And so it got me curious, and of course, I had no idea about history of wrestling or things like that. So I had a video store, and I remember this really vividly. It was called Forbes Video. And it was about 3 miles from my house. So as I got into wrestling and I started watching primetime, the syndicated shows, I went back and I saw these videos, Coliseum videos, and some of the older ones, like, I'm not going to go to the names. There's so many out there, but I started renting them and I started watching them and I started getting into the older stuff to kind of learn wrestling history of the WWF, obviously, and seeing these crazy matches. I remember seeing Morocco Snuka in the cage off a Coliseum video. That might have been the one that popped out me really, really big. And then as we gradually went along, I started watching the pay-per-views. So WrestleMania 3 and 4, I rented them. I think WrestleMania 4, I probably rented it like 50 times to watch that one because it was so amazing and it was this big, huge tournament. And then Mania 5 is when I started doing all the pay-per-views and things from that point on. But yeah, a lot of early memories of some of these videos. I never really owned one, but I rented a lot of them from my local place, to make a long story short.
Of course, WrestleMania 4, 2 tapes. You've got to.
Correct.
That one must have been very popular, though, I reckon. You must have been very lucky to see if that one was available.
It was, it was funny because during the summer when I was home, because my parents worked and I was home by myself a lot, I probably watched a lot of wrestling, and WrestleMania 4 was probably on the rotation at least every 3 weeks or so, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, WrestleMania 4 is down the list for me. It does have a lot of charm, but even
Well, no,
now...
it's a terrible show. I mean, don't get me wrong, but back then I thought it was great because you had all these different stars and they're larger than life. Back then I wasn't looking so much at match quality as I was the character in the show.
Yeah, that's very true. That's important too. And of course, now with things like the network, if we wish to pause it in the middle of the Hogan Andre match so we can have that true full 2-tape effect, we could do so very, very easily.
Or Honky Tonk or Brutus Beefcake or any other numerous matches.
Oh, that's just a pure skip, that one. That's
yes.
God, I'm just fucking terrible. Anyway, more than enough WrestleMania 4 talk. Slightly ahead of where we are for our videotape today. Sean, our first time guests on Senior Video always get to select the tape that we are looking at on the network. So why don't you tell the Wrestle Craze youngsters what we are looking at today?
I am super excited about this one. We are going to be looking at the Hart Foundation Coliseum video.
Oh, excellent choice. This was another one I watched very soon after the home video classics dropped on the network. I want to say it was the start of 2018. I think they've been up there for about 3 years now. This was the second or third one I watched after inexplicably Super Tape 2. No, I don't know why either. So yeah, Hart Foundation was a bit of a jump on. Yes, I will do Super Tape 2 for this one at some point. Don't worry, everybody. Hang tight. Yeah. Bret Hart, one of my all-time favourite guy, topped my GWE list. Have been a little hazy on some of the early Hart Foundation stuff, so watching this tape was a bit of a godsend, and I am delighted that you have picked it, Sean.
Well,
any special reason you picked it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people would think that the podcasts I listen to, I'm mainly into the NWA and stuff, but I really was in early WWF, and I would say the Hart Foundation. I didn't follow a lot of the feuds in '86 or much. It was more about match and not so much about the feuds. What really struck me about the Hart Foundation for the very first time was actually, I think, one of the first things we see on this tape was when they won the tag team titles. And I had seen the matches, WrestleMania VI are in the Battle Royal, and I have seen things along the way. But this was the first time I had really followed an angle or a match that really stood out to me. And the Hart Foundation, for some reason, stood out to me. Bret Hart stood out to me. Anvil stood out to me. I like the British Bulldogs. They were a great team. But this whole thing with how they win these titles and how it plays out and leading into WrestleMania 3, it grabbed me. And I will have to say they are probably the first true tag team I latched onto that I absolutely 100% loved and followed their career from the moment that I started watching them.
I could definitely see why. Just the perfect mix for me, the Hart Foundation. They've got everything covered between the two of them, and we get to see a lot of that exemplified in some of the matches here. So let's hand over to Craig the George, shall we? We'll get him out the way, then we'll dive right in.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Craig the George, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to another edition of Coliseum Video's official World Wrestling Federation home video series. This cassette, the triumphant story of two young men who have chased the British Bulldogs literally around the world in pursuit of that tag team title. And now they have achieved their goal. Managed by the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, the current tag team champions are Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the Hart Foundation. The Hitman, a second-generation pro wrestler who possesses some of the finest technical ability anywhere. He is coupled with the power of Anvil Neidhart, a man who left the ranks of the NFL. He said pro football just wasn't tough enough. This tape features not only their best matches, but a never-before-seen visit to the secret offices of the Hart Foundation and the complete history of the highly controversial friendship with Danny Davis.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've heard Craig the George on Senior Video. It's not quite going to be the last, but to coin a phrase from another set of podcasts, inferior ones, of course, Sean, what's your favourite Craig the George call? Take your time.
The beginning of this tape, how's that?
Good answer. I would also have accepted Matilda, but no, that's fine. So, after running through what we will see on the tape, as you have heard, we do indeed cut to the match from Superstars in February 1987, as mentioned just now by Sean, in which the Hart Foundation became tag team champions. And yes, the Superstars banners are nicely blurred out. Danny Davis allows two men in the ring, and Vince is incredulous. He asks the very fair question, where is Dynamite? But I'm not sure that one can actually be answered. Maybe not for the reasons he states, but even so. Davis then doesn't count when Bulldog hits Anvil with the running power slam, and then from there, Davey Boy gets decimated by the Foundation. They hit the Hart clothesline. I think that name needs some work. And there are our new champs. Vince McMahon on commentary calls this the biggest disgrace in World Wrestling Federation officiating, and I wonder if he still thinks that. So, Sean, we open up there very strongly with the Harts becoming the tag team champs. We don't get all of this match, although if my research is correct, there wasn't a whole lot to it anyway. A strong way to start the video. What do you think of what we did get from this match as well?
So I think all said, if I timed it out, this was 3 minutes and 30 seconds of watching this.
Okay.
And there wasn't a whole lot of match. You're right. It was more like this wasn't really a match as it was so much as an angle, I guess, because back in those days, I think I was 13. I had no idea that, Dynamite was hurt or he had back issues or whatever the story was. I assumed the Hart Foundation had just taken him out. And that's really what the story was because I was naive, long live kayfabe, right? But it was, I love this. I thought Davey Boy looked really good in this, kind of being the one-man warrior in this. There was a double DDT that looked really good. I thought the Hart Foundation did good work on Davey Boy. I enjoyed this whole segment, maybe not so much as a match per se, but more or less as an angle with some cool shine from Davey Boy and some good stuff from the Hart Foundation. So I'm not really going to rate it. It's more of an all-time angle for me, obviously, to sell the Danny Davis thing down the line as well. So it's kind of twofold here. They win the titles, you sell Danny Davis as the heel ref, and Danny Davis is on his way to not so much glory.
Nicely put. Yeah, does everything it needs to, this match, I think, or at least what we get of it here. Am I right in saying this is the match where Davey Boy actually carries Dynamite to the ring on his shoulders?
It might be, yes, correct. Like you said, you don't show the whole opening. It's just, Dynamite's just missing. You don't see him the whole match. He's just at ringside, and they keep going back to him. And it's funny because you see wrestlers that sell for less nowadays, and he's wiped out just from being attacked from behind for the whole match.
I will give Dynamite a little bit of credit on this one. Maybe he was still selling the bump he took at the end of the tag match at WrestleMania VII.
Correct. I mean, like I said, this is a 4-star moment with storytelling and probably like a 1-star, 1.5-star match is what I would say.
I think that's fair based on what we get. I do love how emphatic the victory is at the end, though. I mean, Davis does his shtick, so you have to do that to tell that story. But after that, for the next 45 seconds and a minute, Davey Boy just gets demolished by the Harts. They take him to pieces where there is no other choice but him just to take the 3 count. And I love that sort of thing.
Just really good tag work. Yeah, that's what I loved. Is it's just good tag team wrestling by the Hart Foundation.
You get to see their tag team skills here, and they use those to win the match. I am an absolute sucker for that sort of thing. Bulldog just had no answer to it. He tried, but he was up against not just 2 people, but a well-refined tag team who had honed their skills in kayfabe.
Yeah, and there was some other stuff too. I mean, like Jesse, like they do a double DDT that was really good. And Jesse calls it a double move because he doesn't even know what to call it. He calls it, even though Jake Roberts is there, he doesn't want to call it a DDT because back in that day you couldn't have someone else do a DDT, right? And they had the can crowd in here too. So I was really watching. I didn't realize how much they did can crowds back in the days, and you could see the crowd going wild. You could verbally hear it, but you watch it. People are sitting in their seats while it's going crazy. This is just great, fun thing to watch. A great 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I loved it.
And do you think it was a good choice to open the tape with to tell us what we're going to be dealing with here?
I do, because I feel like this is kind of that moment that brought them to light. And now you're going to go back and see some of the history that led them to this moment. So I really like how they laid this out a little bit.
Yeah, because the chronology is otherwise all over the place on this tape. But if you're going to start somewhere, start with them getting the belts.
Correct.
Which is really the whole point of this video, as we find out. So let's get that one in there early.
Yep.
Yeah. Did everything it needed to and did it really, really well. A really fine start. So our next matchup is one we do get to see in full. It's a contest versus the, and I quote, sensational brothers from French Canada, airing from MSG in September 1986. As is now customary on these shows, I will happily point out the episode of the Place to Be podcast. You can hear full play-by-play on this match. That will be number 459 in the archives, for which Kelly Nelson joined the PICs. I shall point out that Alfred thinks that the Rougeaus mean business. And yes, that is business with a capital W.
Milk toast. I always found the Rougeaus to be very milk toast. They were very generic baby faces. So, but they were very good in the ring. But as far as character development at this point, they were very blah.
Not quite there. We're a good year out at that point. We get 14 minutes of action here. It's a lengthy match, and it is the Rougeaus who get the win. A dropkick assisted sunset flip scores it for them. Gorilla actually points out the illegal man was executing the sunset flip and a pin, but at the same time, because they're baby faces, he doesn't seem to mind too much. So Sean, there's our first full-length match on here. It's the Harts doing the job to a mid-card at best tag team, which again makes it a curious choice, but I liked a lot of the action here. What did you think?
Yeah, I liked it too. So this was September of '86, right? So we're still several months away from them winning, and it's also interesting to see kind of how their outfits range. So right now in this one, they're in their blue tights, right? I think it's the blue and black versus the pink and black. So yes, the Harts always change. It's interesting to watch that as we go along because we see several different outfits from them tonight. It's also interesting. I wanted to bring up here. I had no concept of house show matches back in the day. I literally thought they just filmed these in arenas, and I had no idea what house shows were. So it was really cool to see this. So seeing a big arena being shown on TV was really cool. And it always amazed me, like when I would get these tapes or Coliseum tapes, how, you would never see any of these matches, and then prime time you would see these matches, but you would never see anything like this on the syndicated shows, right? Like matches like this, you never saw in syndication really, because this is work rate stuff, right? This is stuff that in mid-1980s WWF, you aren't used to seeing. You're used to seeing the show, the spectacle of Hulk Hogan. You're not used to seeing a freaking tag team match that you could see, that you would think you would go see in the NWA, not a WWF. So this kind of opens your eyes to how good house show matches actually could be. I love this. I actually went 3.25 stars on it. I thought it was good tag work. I thought it was a good win for the Rojos. And I think they won by, if I were correct, I got to look at my notes. I think they won by some nefarious means. It wasn't really a clean win, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I've got drop kick assisted sunset flip here.
Okay, drop kick assisted.
Illegal man doing the pin, I believe.
Yeah. So again, this is a really good, fun tag work by the Hart Foundation. Great shine by the Rougeaus as the baby faces. And again, character-wise, they're very blah back in this time frame. Obviously they don't get really character development until they turn heel, really. But this was an easy 3.25 star tag team match, a good, fun 14-minute watch that wasn't boring, didn't slow down, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I'd go there too. This was definitely above average. It's one of those where they ended it at just the right time. It was getting to the 13-minute mark, and it could threatening to feel just a little long, but then they took it home, which is quite the skill, I must say. And you're quite right about these MSG matches. I'm seeing a lot more of them now for this project, and so they've come up when the guys have been doing the reboots from the Place to Be podcast. The MSG matches, so many of them feel like a completely different world to the Dayglow, Happy Clapper universe that WWF otherwise inhabited at this time. And I can see why you would have no concept of these, Sean. They almost might have been beamed in from another universe. No, it's dark, it's grainy, the matches go on long, it's emphasis on mat work. It's really something else.
It really is. Like I said, if you watch the syndicated shows in the mid-'80s, like '86, you didn't get matches this is an unknown commodity for me in the mid-'80s. Seeing this, if I had saw this match on a WWF show in the '80s and I saw this particular match, I probably would have fallen out and passed out, because I had no concept of what kind of great matches you could have when you're just seeing the prelim matches every weekend, right? So yes. Prime time really opened my eyes, and so did the Coliseum videos to this stuff.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got this. 'Cause for me, again, Rougeaus prior to the heel turn, haven't seen a whole lot. I was very impressed by them here, particularly Ray. Thank you very much in this match. He showed a lot. I thought some of his arm work with Brett in particular was very, very nice. Jacques Rougeau is getting a bit of a kicking where they are right now on the Place to Be podcast. A couple of months ago when I was a guest on there, said I'm just not seeing it from the Mountie in 1991. But as a tag worker, perfectly cromulent, I thought, and he more than held his own here. And it's one of those where it's always a little surprising to see the objects of the tape doing a job. But at the same time, if you're trying to show their journey to the titles, it's going to happen. And of course, Hart Foundation are still heels. So even if you did buy this tape or rent it, you probably want to see them lose once or twice. Very impressed by the Rougeaus. About other tag matches of theirs that might have aired on MSG around this time or elsewhere, I think I'd like to get hold of them. Maybe in the course of this project, I'll come across one or two more. Yeah,
there's so many matches like this. And then another match we're going to see later on. They had numerous matches around the country against that team too, which we'll talk about later. But I'm sure there's a treasure trove out there of matches between these two teams that we haven't even seen.
Please write in. Oh, hello. What is this? Oh, now I know where we're going. We're going to the Boston Garden for a match Brett himself selected. And I think I know why. Yes, it is he versus Ricky effing Steamboat. Oh, you beauty. I repeat, Bret Hart versus Ricky Steamboat. Now, I don't have many notes for this one because my hands were otherwise occupied at the time, but this is what I did manage to get down. Steamboat has all of this for most of the first 10 minutes, and then Bret gets to show what he can do on offense at the time, including a running power slam. Oh, fantastic. We'll break the action down a bit more in a second, but let's get to the fantastic finish here, where Bret secures a visual pin off the Hart clothesline, but the referee is down. Rather brilliantly, the ref might be down, but he's not out because the bump wasn't that strong. Very, very nicely done there. Take that, Undertaker versus Triple H from WrestleMania 17.
Yep.
So when the ref, I thought you might like that. So when the ref comes to, Bret goes for a flying body press, but Ricky expertly spins it round into a cover of his own for the 3. Sean, revel in the majesty with me.
All right, so can you allow me to indulge a little bit on this one?
Be my guest.
All right,
as long as you wish.
So, okay, this one might be a little lengthy because I have a lot of hot takes when it comes to certain Steamboat matches.
Really?
And I want to clarify something on this. I love Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I think he's a great worker. He's a great wrestler, has great matches. I have really strong opinions on one match that everybody seems to love, but it's mainly due to how it's portrayed and the outside interference of a lug that they didn't need to have involved in a blood feud. So I just need to clarify. I love Ricky Steamboat. The match I'm referring to is WrestleMania 3. I'm a big, I kind of not put it down so much as I don't enjoy the outside interference that should not be there. Does that make sense, Rory?
I think it does. I wouldn't quite go 5 stars for that much myself. Steel really fucking pisses me off during it.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. I want to make sure I'm staying away from the takes that people will consider something. You know what I mean? So I'm staying away from that. In saying that, this is the match I would have loved to see Savage and Steamboat have. Oh my God. Like, I had never seen this match before. It took me aback. I think I had heard rumors about this match, but I've just never seen it.
I think it's on Bret's first DVD.
Okay.
I think it's on there.
Well, I don't remember ever seeing it. And this is literally, Bret Hart is still, this is almost a year earlier than when they win the belts. 6.5 years before Bret even becomes a world title contender. Steamboat literally he hasn't been in the WWF that long. He was in Crockett in 95. And I had no idea at this point in 1986, like if I were watching this with 13-year-old Sean eyes, I would have no idea who Steamboat was or how seasoned he actually was, right? I had no idea. He comes in, I have no idea who this guy is. And again, like I said, I joke a lot about the other Steamboat match, but holy cow, man, this match is so good between two guys just going at it. To your point, Steamboat works over the first 10 minutes, but the match was so fluid. Bret was great shine within this match. It was just really, really good. Jimmy Hart is a really great underrated manager in this period. Like, he's so verbally, like, one of the things you'll see throughout these matches tonight, he's just loud. He's verbal. He's coaching. He's building this guy up. And it was just good. The Savat kick on an atomic drop by Steamboat was amazing. That was one that stood out. Bret did a neck breaker that looked really savage. There's a DDT variation in this that looked really good. A really good Bret power slam. The ref bump was good because it kind of puts some spin on how the finish was kind of maybe convoluted and controversial. But man, I have to say this is an easy 4-star match for me. And I would say if you've never seen this match, go out of your way to watch this. This is a freaking classic between just two guys going at it, and it's great.
Yeah, matches like this are the reason I do this project month to month. I have to crawl through a lot of brown stuff to get to the diamonds, but things like this do make my journey worthwhile as long as I've got my mask on. What a treat this match was. And I wrote in my notes that Steamboat has all of this for the first 10 minutes, and then Bret gets to show on offense what he can do. And then they trade off for 2 or 3 minutes at the end. It's perfectly put together. It's an offense-based match, which I really like about it. Steamboat, as the face, gets plenty of shine for a very long time. But then Bret switches it around and shows us what he can do on offense as well. And that's what I really love about this. It's almost feels like a face-v-face match, even though Bret is very much a heel at this point. Jimmy Hart in his corner, cheats here and there, low blows, all the rest of it. The way that Bret wrestled this on Steamboat's level, because that's where it was at this point. Steamboat in 86 is a better worker than Bret at 86. Not much, but it's there. I could almost see Bret learning from Steamboat when he's in the match, as if he let him take the first half so he could pick up some pointers going forward. The way that Steamboat just locks on, focuses on a body part, his work on the shoulder, the Bret was exemplary. It's the sort of thing that a lot of modern day viewers might, shame on them, deem as boring, but it's anything but. It is a wrestler working tensely as he can on a body part to wear down his opponent so he can beat him. I just adore all of that stuff, and we got so much of it here. A word you used there, Sean, and it sums it up perfectly: fluid. There were no bumps in the road on this one at all. All the exchanges, all the counters just meshed together perfectly. Didn't put a foot wrong again in this one. And I said, Bret would still get much better than this, which is quite scary, really.
You know what's funny, Rory? I was thinking. I'm sorry. Here's what I was thinking about as you were talking. So I know on Special Relations, one of my favorite matches ever was Bret versus the Macho Man from that Saturday Night Main Event.
Yep.
So what's really funny about it is you have Bret facing Steamboat and Bret facing Savage in two matches that I absolutely adore. Yet you put Savage and Steamboat together, I didn't get the same feel that I did between those two matches. But Bret Hart is the man that gave me both of them what I wanted from them. You know what I mean? It's really cool that there's that symmetry after watching this for me, I think.
Hot take, Bret Hart's a pretty decent worker here. There is a
reason.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty fair take.
It is. Thank you. He is and always will be my favourite of all time. I do just wish, as great as this match was, I'd go 4 stars as well, that we didn't get it again in some other form or fashion a few years later when Bret really was an A++ worker.
Oh, man, could we have got that in 91? That would have been great.
Said it at the same time. That would be, Star System be damned in that one. But,
yes.
What we got here was still pretty damn nifty. And that finish, so well put together, a lot going on, but it all made sense. A sensible ref bump, Steamboat taking his chance, Bret being given the visual victory, so he's being seen by some on Steamboat's level. They just got nothing wrong here at all. I will pivot towards modern fans, as I like to call them, a little bit, who might say it was a little bit slower at parts, and I understand that, but based on what we said earlier with the MSG matches, that's going to happen in places like the Gardens. They're going to slow it down. It's not what you get on the syndicated TV, and we'll prove that by our next match on here as well. But a real treat, and if you hadn't seen this one before, so I'm pretty sure it's on, Bret chose this for his non-screwed DVD that he did in 2005. But if you haven't seen this one before, do fire it up on the network in the Hart Foundation session. It's everything you would hope Bret Hart versus Ricky Steamboat from 1986 would be. Yes, you will get those pangs, but this wasn't the start of a very special series. But beggars cannot be choosers, and these 20 minutes, more than worth your time. In-ring highlights of the tape, one of the in-ring highlights of any tape that I have covered over the last year. I'll say it again.
I would definitely agree. And again, like we talked about in the mid 80s, if you watch the syndicated shows and how I had no idea matches like this existed, shame on me. I feel so bad for that. I wish I'd seen it back then.
Better late than never. One more time. Bret Hart, Ricky Steamboat. Enough said. Now we take a bit of a dip and we head to a taping from Wrestling Challenge. Here's one you might have seen at the time, Sean. I'm sure all the memories came.
Yes, I did see this one.
They came flooding back. Quite the team here as the Harts get to join forces with the, and I quote, rapidly improving Honky Tonk Man. Damning with faint praise, they square off against a pretty good team, though, of Davey Boy Smith, Junkyard Dog, and Tito Santana. I believe this is the debut of the Colonel name for Jimmy Hart, and yes, of course, Bobby has to explain the context of that name to Gorilla. Oh, that Axel. The video quality for this could definitely have done with some remastering. It's like looking at it through a frosted bathroom window. It's really, really strange. And by the way, if you normally consume your pro wrestling through frosted bathroom windows, then please do not get in touch. Junkyard Dog, who I must say is completely done here, unfortunately, takes the vast majority of the heat. Here's Gorilla on commentary. Excellence of execution is what I like to call what the Hitman does. You should tell more people about that one. I really don't have many notes for this. Davey gets the victory for his team here after none other than a 3-way Irish whip collision. I must be honest, Sean, I only watched this a few days ago. I barely remember this match, and my notes didn't really help me very much.
Yeah,
so if you can, do fill me in.
So this is Honky. He's fresh on his heel turn, right? You remember they did that fan vote. He's still in the suspender, so literally he's freshly heel turn. This is new Honky Tonk heel. He was a face. The crowd was super hot. Davey Boy Smith, is shining pretty good in this tape so far, by the way. So that's a win there. Yeah, you're right. JYD is cooked. Faces control the first part of the match, which I thought was super fun. I did enjoy Anvil and the Junkyard Dog facing off a little bit, so that was good. Tito had a good hot tag. Again, there was a spot where Davey Boy did a leaping jump onto the shoulders and did like a rolling pin, which was really good for his size. So again, good shine for him. But yeah, not the best match. I mean, obviously you have Honky Tonk in it, but you also have the Harts, and you have Tito and David Boy Smith, but you also have JYD. I would say for a wrestling challenge though, probably a solid 2-star match. I mean, there's no harm, no foul. The one thing I don't like is now we've had 3 matches now where the people we're talking about on this tape have lost their match. So
yes,
that's where I'm
2
at.
out of 3 is probably pushing it a little bit. Yeah, I'd go
Yes.
with
Yes.
that. Yes. I'll probably go for a semi-gentleman's 1.5 stars. I'll be honest, I cannot fucking remember this
Yeah,
match.
I gave it Gentleman 2. For a TV, like for a wrestling challenge, when you got,
Yes.
what do you say, crap most of the time, it was a solid main,
I do wonder what was on what else filled the remaining 55 minutes of this edition of Wrestling Challenge. I shudder to think. I will say it is
Coco
fairly
Beware versus Barrio or something
more
like
than
that.
likely. Hey, don't be sleeping on Coco now, Sean. You and I both know that he's got something special in his locker.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I know.
Dive into YouTube, everybody, if you haven't listened to the latest edition of Crock and Roll, whenever it drops. You should. But yeah,
Probably one of his best
say,
matches you'll ever see. But anyway.
without a doubt. I will say for an edition of Wrestling Challenge in early 1987, probably as star-studded a 6-man tag as you're going to get.
Yes.
No, the face team, that's not bad. Davey Boy, JYD, and Tito. I can think of worse at this time period. Yeah, JYD was horrible in this match. He was absolutely cooked 1,000 times over. If you can't do your crawling headbutt thing, which looks like the easiest move to do in the game, then you're in trouble, I think. But he still hung around for most of the rest of the year, didn't he?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been watching Mid-South back in his heyday, and it's a very different man you see in 1987 versus 1982.
Everybody's made this joke long before I have, but he had been grabbing a lot of cakes at this point.
He sure had a lot of cakes.
And I think we all know what was in them. Yeah. Thank you. A star power led 1.5 star. But see, matches like this are the reason I don't really do star ratings on this show. But for the sake of argument, yeah, we'll go 1.5. It's good teams. Finishing off a 3-way Irish whip collision. They should definitely bring that back. But another defeat for the Harts, and yeah, get used to that.
And then Rory, another thing, like I said, back in the day, these were if you got even a match like this on their syndicated shows, you were excited because they had big stars in it. So, again, not the greatest match, but if you're just watching your syndicated shows, this is a pretty big deal to see this,
Oh yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. And for a curio, it's good to catch on this. I mean, we're going to be getting the early 1987 wrestling challenges on the network very soon.
I can't wait.
I've just finished working through the drop they put on there a couple of weeks ago. So I'm up to about November 86. Let's get them on there again quickly.
Oh, you're approaching that big angle with Savage.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. All right.
Rubs hands with glee. Right, now we go into the second portion of the VHS, and I think it's only fair, dear listener, I hand over to Mr. Gino Cullen.
This is the city, the hustle, the bustle, the action. It's a city that puts its winners on a pedestal. And what better location for the executive offices, the world headquarters of the Hart Foundation. Come with me now as we take a penetrating look inside the Hart Foundation.
So Gene is here to give us a oh my God, try that again. Gene wouldn't blob this line. Gene is here to give us a penetrative look as he puts it, into the Hart Foundation.
Penetrative.
Penetrative. Say it one more
You
time,
said it
Gene.
better than I could.
Yes, Gene says it better than all of us. I wonder why. He is at the Hart Foundation's world headquarters. It's because they're a foundation, you see. Get it? I will say that whoever laid out the set for this one did a fine job. The walls are adorned with classic pictures as Gene finds his way to the secretary, who he calls, without any fear or favour, a bimbo. 1987, everybody. He has an appointment, and of course he has registered under the name of Mean Gene. He really does live the gimmick, does he not? He is not able to see them yet, but a lady by the name of Cherry is able to show him around. And you know he is only too happy to oblige on that score. Penetrative look. He is especially taken with the steam and sauna room. He really doesn't make himself very difficult to lampoon, does he? Mm-hmm. He now gets introduced to Ilsa, to whom he has to show his credentials. Do you see where this one's going? He doesn't have the proper ones, despite seeing the president last week. He leaves before he gets to show Ilsa any more of his credentials, or at least on camera we get him leaving before he gets to show Ilsa any more of his credentials. I wonder who was responsible for writing this particular skit. Let's go to the second section. We return to reception and now he hears noise. Also, throughout this segment, various women run through the corridors shrieking. And again, my notes just say 1987. He lets himself in, and it is indeed the Harts playing with little dolls. I do think that Gene is referring to the action figures they have rather than Danny Davis, but you can never be too sure. Jimmy Hart is beside himself, which is his default setting, and is finally talked into giving us some answers. The greatest footballer of all time and the greatest scientific wrestler of all time came together to win the tag team titles. Oh yeah, and Danny Davis is here too. They use the action figures for strategy, we learn, and then in a very nice touch, they briefly review the matches we have already seen. That's good attention to detail there. But guys, we didn't lose is not going to catch on as a chant. And why do they wear pink? Because they are brutal in pink. And again, their words, not mine. Gene is perplexed by the lack of athletic equipment in the offices, but then he gets introduced to the trainers. Brett himself certainly seems to enjoy the impromptu massage he receives, and tries to convince us that Stu Hart condones this sort of training. This might go some way to explaining why in his book Brett is so brazen about the trainers he met on the road. Oh my goodness, Sean. When people think of this video, this is the segment that comes to mind straight away. And I think those 5 minutes have explained why.
Well, what'd you say? Penetrating? What's the word?
Penetrative.
Penetrative.
Got to get it right.
Penetrative. Oh my God, I'm not even going to try to say it again. This is your typical cartoon 1987 WWF stuff. Listen, this is a fun segment. The action figures popped me. Mean Gene is, I mean, there's no other way to put it. He was just a jerk, right? Like, he is just a curmudgeon. He's not nice to the women. I mean, he's rough in this. So that was a little awkward for me. You know, they're wearing mink stoles, and Brett calls them neck warmers. They say they have 200 secretaries. Later on, they say they have 76. The posters on the wall are like movie posters, but they're acting like these are like Hart Foundation related pictures on the wall. And they have these poor ladies walking down the hall with Gene who have no idea what they're really doing. They probably just got paid $25 for the show and the video, right? I actually liked this segment. I thought it was pretty fun and pretty cheesy and your typical 87 stuff. And the fact that the Hart Foundation from Canada has their offices in New York City, I thought was also pretty funny.
Yes.
So, I thought it was pretty good for what it was. I mean, again, I'm not one that's into the hokey stuff as much as some might be from this era, but it was harmless fun, and I think it's kind of a fun little gem to take a look at on this video if you've never seen it. It's very funny.
Yeah, it didn't take itself too seriously.
No, they knew they were ridiculous, and that was fine.
And I think as such, it ages better than a lot of these type of skits we see on these videos. I mean, certainly the one I reviewed a couple of months ago, the Bushwhackers invite Gene for a barbecue, for example, is one that didn't really tug at any strings. This one did. I think everybody involved was aware of the ridiculousness of it. I mean, Danny Davis just gurning for the camera, not saying a word. a rather chunky Bret Hart just about getting his lips around the wood.
Yeah, he did look a little chunky. He was a little creepy too because he was rubbing himself a little bit too, like rubbing his chest and everything, which is creepy.
Of course he was.
Yeah, and
read his book. Read his book.
Yeah, I know. But one thing I did like that you brought up, I liked that they debated the Rougeau ending, and they also argued the Steamboat result. So it was a really nice tie-in on there. I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was pretty cool.
That was excellent. I thought it made it seem like this was a genuine presentation, which was marvelous. And they were complaining at the fact that they're a video about them, but the compilers have put matches in which they lose, and that was excellent. I was not expecting that, I must say. Jimmy Hart led this one as you would expect, and did so in his own inimitable style. I'm all about this area of Jimmy Hart. If I see him playing Gooseberry with Hulk Hogan one more time in 2021, then I don't think I'm going to be responsible for my actions. But 1987 heel Jimmy Hart, with Memphis still freshly lurking around him, I can very much live with him. I think he's great at this point.
I agree.
Perfect team up. Anvil does the Anvil stuff when he needs to. I would say 1987 Jim the Anvil Neidhart is a better talker than 1997 Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Mm-hmm. We're going to get hungry and we're going to forget our manners. None of that here. And just a segment with its tongue planted firmly in its cheek. Yeah, I do wonder where they found these actresses. Some of them did seem as though they belonged in a certain other kind of film presentation, is it fair to say?
I made a note of that. Of course, I have a lot of respect for this podcast and you, so I will refrain from typical Sean comments on stuff like that. But yeah, you're going the right direction on that thought process, yes.
Ilsa in particular was all a bit casting couch, shall we say that?
Yeah, well, let's just say we should put trainers in quotes. That's what I would say.
There's a reason quotes. I wrote I've got trainers written there in quotes and written there in quotes.
There you go.
Yeah. A fun segment. Again, hasn't aged especially well. I feel like you and I, Sean, are saying that a lot on podcasts at the moment, of its time and all of that. But if you can see through that fog, this is a fun few minutes.
And it was way too long. This thing seemed like it went on for an hour. So I thought it was a little long, too.
But they played with dolls. Come on. Strategy.
I used to play with my dolls for hours at a time, too. Not when I was 30.
Yeah, Brett doesn't mention that in his book.
Nope.
He was playing with other sort of dolls when he was moving swiftly on. So now we get the Danny Davis story. Well, a very truncated Danny Davis story, but anyway, Davis is about to officiate a match on Superstars, and he even slugs down another ref in order to do so. But that doyen of charisma, Jack Tunney, is on hand to suspend Danny Davis for life. Suspend for life. Whilst Jesse understandably grapples with the semantics of that one, Jimmy Hart is here to help Danny away. And then we cut to Davis, wearing what looks for all the world like a straitjacket, looking very pleased with himself that he is now the newest member of the Foundation.
One of the worst ring gear of all time.
Fucking dreadful. Jimmy Hart talks about open contracts. No, Sean, they call this the Danny Davis story. It isn't really that, because we don't see anything that leads up to him becoming a crooked referee. None of the really fine storytelling they did over a few months. We just cut to him being suspended. But they do bring him in on the Hart Foundation tape. Plays an important part in especially what's coming up very shortly afterwards. So I was happy to see this on there, although it did scrimp on a bit of the detail.
Well, yeah, they did, because honestly, you could go back to this story in February of '86 when Savage beat Santana for the Intercontinental title. Davis was the referee, and it kind of started then, where they started laying like things down where he was, not up to par. So this story really legitimately played out for almost the whole entire year. But you're right, they truncated it. They didn't bring everything up. The problems I had with this, because I thought it was a fun story, but I didn't like that Tito was a foil. So it seemed like Tito Santana seemed to be a foil for this. I thought Tito deserved better. And down the line, Davis went into feuds with Coco and Sam Houston. And honestly, I've seen Coco and Sam Houston have some pretty good matches on another pod I do that I never would have thought. I thought they were that great. And at the time, I thought they were more suitable to Davis. But now I also think that they were probably too good for Davis too. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun little story. And I had thoughts about it being on this one, because when I think Hart Foundation, I think Danny Davis is like maybe a handful of it. So I didn't really know why it was on here, because they didn't really tell the whole story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it was short. They felt they had to pay some lip service to Danny Davis because he is the third member and all that, but they didn't want to spend too much of that precious short play videotape time, so we just got the very end of it.
Yeah, and they had to lead us into the WrestleMania 3 match, obviously, which is, next on the tape. So
while we're here, what is that outfit? It's it's like a Harlequin costume pumped up with.
We have
oxygen.
to remember that he was an ex-ref, and the outfit has to tell us that. It's part of the visual storytelling. Come on, pal. Let's really think about Vince McMahon and his thought process here.
It looks like, just thinking out loud, he looks like a cross between a Harlequin and the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Oh, yeah, he's so out of shape. And he almost, like, his face looks like a mafia boss because he's got a lot of pop marks on it. But the rest of him is just like you said, pot belly, the Harley Quinn. He's just a hot mess.
It's terrible. It's absolutely fucking terrible. But now we get him in a match. I'm looking forward to your star ratings of this one, Sean. It's a handicap contest against Jim Powers and some other schmuck. Did you get the other semi-jobber's name?
Powers and Jerry Allen.
Jerry Allen. There we go. As great.
I almost wrote Paul Roma just for the sake of argument, but I did not.
I wish it hadn't. I would have remembered Paul Roma, trust me. The unforgettable Paul Roma, the greatest horseman of them all. Alex Wright won't forget him. Anyway, as great as the Davis angle was, he didn't spend the slow burn time working on his promo ability, because his inset one here is fucking ghastly. Oh, it's fucking terrible promo. Match is a total squash. 2.5 stars, probably not.
No, I didn't even rate this match. It's just a squash, and you got to enjoy some of the good stuff, like Davis. He makes fun of Jack Tunney, which is funny, right? I think he calls Tunney a big fat slob, which made me laugh. And he has open contracts, by the way. I forgot to mention that. He has open contracts to face anybody that wants to face him. But this squash was awful. It's just, he gets heat for tossing a jobber out, and that's about all he does. It's terrible.
Definitely not 2.5 stars. Total squash. But yeah, so we get all of this. We do get a Danny Davis match. This is the one thing on the tape so far I don't think we needed. I think we got it to where we're going to go next.
We didn't need this segment at all for the match.
Bit of a waste of time. Because now we are going to go to that match from WrestleMania 3. Don't worry, Sean. It's not that one. It's this one. We do again only get highlights here of the Harts and Davis versus the Bulldogs and Tito. I rather suspect that's because there were probably still many potential sales of the WrestleMania 3 VHS to be made at this point, and they didn't want to give away a whole match. We get the last minute or so, but we do get to hear Bob Uecker and Mary Hart on commentary, so that's nice. God, Davey Boy really does kill Davis with that tombstone, doesn't he? Jesus,
man. Again, a tombstone, a suplex, a power slam. I mean, Davis just gets destroyed, man. Davey, part of this wants me to say, is this the Hart Foundation and Davey Boy Smith tape? Because Davey Boy's just amazing to watch.
If I did do MVP for specific tapes like this, Davey Boy would actually be in contention. He's all over this one.
Oh, and he's good.
He's very good at this point. He really is. He's a good size. He can still move around the ring. He combines with his opponents well. Yeah, mid-80s Davey Boy, again, somebody you shouldn't sleep on. Yep. But despite everything he hits Davis with here, Danny himself can slug Davey with the megaphone and get the win for his team. For more on this match, you will be wanting Place to Be podcast number 471, where Mr. JAD is on hand with Scott and JT. Much like Justin on that edition of the podcast, Sean, I like the match. There's some good action, not that we get to see it here. But after all of that, Davis should be deader than dead. He should not be up 10 seconds later hitting Davey Boy with the megaphone and getting the win. To think I complain about no selling in 2021, we even had it back in 1987. The grass wasn't always greener.
Correct. He took, like we said, he took a beating. That tombstone was savage, the suplex, the power slam. And I remember watching this match, how shocked I was at the end of the result, because in these situations, you really think that like someone like Davis is going to get their comeuppance. I had like him winning this match. It was just insane to me at the time. And it really was no real payoff because, like I said earlier, after this match, all he does is go on to have thousands of matches with Koko B. Ware and Sam Houston, and he really doesn't go anywhere. So it was kind of a wasted win, if you ask me.
Definitely the high watermark. I can understand him getting the pin, though, because he was the heel. I mean, the crowd, they just fucking wanted him to die when he first tagged in. The heat is off the charts when you get to see the full match.
But the match overall is not bad. But
I like it. Match is good.
Yeah.
We can't really rate it here because we only get the last 60 seconds.
Correct.
But the match at WrestleMania 3 is indeed very good.
Yep.
I think what they should have done, though, say Davis getting the pin is fine, but he should just be a body. He should be just dragged on top. It should be Brett or the Anvil using the megaphone, and Davis's lifeless carcass is hauled on top for the 3 count. He should not be Compos Mentis enough to do the megaphone shot himself.
This is one of those rare ones where I would say I feel like the faces should have won this match. The Harts had already run the tag team titles. Tito's already been screwed over a million times by him. They should have won this match.
Yeah,
the faces.
At least it's a win for the Harts on this tape, although not
correct.
Actually,
that is good. That is correct. They actually have a win, which is a positive.
You take what you can. Into the home straight on this tape now, and we go back in time to the Boston Garden, and it's November 1986, as finally we get a full match between the Harts and the Bulldogs. Alfred, him again, calls a double DDT a double pile driver. Oh dear, oh dear. Gorilla constantly calling a Russian leg sweep a neck breaker. Doesn't look quite so bad now. We actually get a dramatic kick out here when the ref comes to, but only gets to 2.7 or so before Dynamite kicks out. And then they do it again. It really is all about kickouts in 1986, isn't it? Can't help it. Davey then with a roll-up of his own, which shows a lot of air, unfortunately. We've been praising Davey to the skies, but that roll-up didn't look all that hot. Anvil was not able to kick out of that roll-up. He really should have been. What an awful, awful finish that was, and it's such a shame because there was some really good work leading up to that, which we will now talk about. But I make that the 3rd defeat for the topics of this tape so far, Sean.
Yeah, this match... I went up 2 3/4 on this match. I thought that could have been better. There was some good stuff in there. I thought the Harts looked really strong on their heel work. They almost dominate this whole match. I mean, Davey Boy gets a kind of a crisp-looking crucifix. I thought that was good. But there was a long heat on Davey Boy Smith. Like, I felt like it went on way too long. But he gets a press slam and a rope crotch to Brett on the tag. Dynamite was really good on the hat tag, and it was good to see Dynamite in the full Bulldog tag team and his snap suplex on Brett was amazing, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a lot of long heat. I didn't think it really flowed as well as it could have, and it could have just been I've been spoiled by the other matches we watched on this tape, but I didn't feel like it matched up to those other ones. And yeah, I just the other thing I noticed is, did you notice that Gorilla and Alpha were kind of down on the Bulldogs, and they said they were lucky that they won. And I felt like they were right, because at the end of the day, the Harts dominated them, and I felt like they were right to say that. So I went 2 3/4. It's not a bad match, but I know they've had better along the way.
Could you, off the top of your head, you might not be able to think of this, any superior Bulldogs and Harts matches that might be worth trying to dig out? Because we didn't get a vintage one on this tape, sadly.
I'd have to go back and research it, but I know I've seen better matches between them. I just can't recollect from where.
If you do, you know where to find me. And
I will look it up. I will look for it, but I know they've had better matches.
Yeah, this was a little bit of a mess. Only a little, still a lot going on. Really liked the double team moves, and Bulldog's power stuff was nice. But for whatever reason, the people who know each other so well didn't quite feel on the same page in the middle going. It was very, very choppy there, and it sort of just bounded along not very comfortably until the really messed up finish. That roll up from Davey was a disgrace. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
almost negated all the good work he's done on this tape.
I would say the positive, like I said, is that the Hart Foundation actually looked good and strong, and they didn't look weak as a team. They actually dominated. So if there's a positive in this match, this is how they should have looked on their tape versus losing every match, to be fair. So
they had the vast majority of this one, a good 80% of the action. Their double team moves were excellent. You can see what a great team they were. Not just 2 singles guys put together, although I suppose in a way they were fantastic team. We got to see it in fits and starts in this match. Not as much as I would have liked, especially against a team like the Bulldogs. I do hope a 4+ star match is out there between them. I'm sure a very knowledgeable bunch listen to this show every month. I'm sure they're writing fiendishly on their postcards right now to let me know what I should be watching.
I'm sure there are better match historians than me that would be able to get you that match quicker than I will. So just to be fair. So
okay, I gave you first dibs, Sean. You had the first.
I will definitely look it up, but I know, like you said, there's people out there that know where to look.
Without a doubt. Yeah, 2.5 for this one. Bit of a mess. but at least the Harts got to show their tag team chops for what feels like the first time in a very long time on this tape.
Yes.
I think because it was, just looking back at my notes. But they're going to have one more, as is so often the case on these videos. We rush to the finish and they really shoehorn the ending in without closing it out properly. But we do get a Hart title defense on here at MSG in February 1987, and it's the dear old Killer Bees going for the belts today. Place to be Nation number 467 if you want the full précis of this one, but another Kelly Nelson special. For the Harts, wrap up the tape in fairly short order here. Sean, what do you think of our closing match?
It's kind of similar to the last match. I went 2.5 on this one. Obviously, this is for Madison Square Garden, correct?
It is, yes.
All right. So Gorilla, I did enjoy Gorilla's commentary because he was really crapping all over in Jimmy and Bobby. I thought that was really, really funny. I did enjoy that. But the match itself was okay. I mean, I go back to, and I'm not going to go play by play on things I liked or things I didn't like about this match. I feel like they've had better matches, and I feel like there was a lot of long drawn out heat by the Harts. Again, similar to the last match, it just seemed like the heat was long on the Bees. It's a slow match. I think it has a weak finish, which I didn't like. And I went 2.5. I wish we had closed on a stronger match. Again, historians out there, go back and find another Harts Bees match because they've had some bangers as well, but I feel like this wasn't one. And it's just because it's just too much long heat. There's not a lot of fluidity. It's just, I mean, there's some matches where the heels can work over the faces and it feels fluid, and the face gets this big shine where they try to escape, but then they get knocked back down. But yeah, I didn't feel this one so much, Rory, to be honest with you. I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, I would have gone 2.5 for this one as well, although it was a different 2.5. 2.5 for the previous match was a disappointment because they got a few things wrong and it didn't really click. This one, on the other hand, there's nothing really technical wrong with it. I don't remember any particular or special issues or mistakes, but it was just there. This felt like end of the night MSG. I don't know where it actually took place in the card.
It's about the time limit's about to expire, so you can go hit the train because the curfew's here. Yes.
Very curfewy. That's the word, yeah.
Yes.
We got to see a Jim Brunzell dropkick, so that's something. First one of those I've seen in these tapes in a year, so mark that one off.
The Killer Bees are a very underrated team. They've had some really great matches in this timeline.
Yeah, I do like the Killer Bees. Brett himself has gone on the record as saying Killer Bees one of his all-time favourite opponents, be it singles or tag.
Yep.
And Brett loves about working safe. Says they're the safest people he was ever in the ring with. I think he said it was like having a night off every night when he was in there. Yeah, I can't really say a whole lot about it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It is the Harts getting a fairly solid defense on their tape, and I think we needed to end with a Hart victory.
It was weird though. The bell rings and a Neidhart. I mean, it was a hot mess of an ending, Mel.
The bell rang early. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was really kind of a mess at the end. But again, to your point, the Harts actually win the final match on their tape, which is great.
Yeah, and that's like gold dust, not him, on this tape. So finishing with a Hart win, even though the timekeeper did his best to screw it up, is where we can go. And that brings us to the end of the tape. As we get for anything made up till about 1987, we get a credit sequence with various stills from the video. And I think they're chosen rather at random. There's a picture of Danny Davis, on which is superimposed the words "Special thanks to Vince McMahon." And think about it. And the very last shot we get before the tape runs out is actually Davey Boy holding Davis in position for the tombstone at WrestleMania VIII. Not a shot of the Harts with...
It's a great scene.
Absolutely agree. But maybe a shot of the Harts with the belts would have been the way to finish.
Yeah, maybe not show a picture of one of the topics of your video about to die, right? Probably not a good idea.
They probably just pressed pause at random intervals and stuck them on there. The best they could, pressing pause quickly. They only had one shot to do it in June 1987. Editing skills probably not quite up to snuff where they are now. But that does bring us to the end of the Hart Foundation video. So Sean will do some awards and then we'll have a brief chat about the video itself when we get to the final one. So I think this one's going to be a bit of a layup, as they say. our Rewind, which is our best match or segment. Take it away.
Easily Brett versus Steamboat. Go out of your way to watch this match. It's absolutely amazing.
Nowadays, it's so easy to find. You could fire it up on the network by the time I finish this sentence.
I'm embarrassed to say that I did not watch it. I had not seen it till I watched for this video, so I'm embarrassed at myself.
You still chose this tape, Sean. I've given you the medium to do it, so
okay, thank you.
All's well that ends well. What is our fast forward though? Our worst match or segment?
Well, I didn't count the opening match. I felt it was more of an angle. I didn't count the squash match. So if I was going to go worst from a main event standpoint, it would have been the 6-man.
Yeah, I went, perhaps unfairly, but I'm going to say it anyway. I went for the Danny Davis squash match because it didn't belong on this tape. We could have cut that and gone straight to WrestleMania 3, shown a bit more of WrestleMania 3 even, and there would have been no harm done.
Yeah,
so
I thought that was more of a story, so I picked the worst match of the actual match I felt was a match. That's what I did. Yeah.
We've mentioned one or two of them just now. So what is your pause moment? Not in the opposites of Titan 1987, but if you had your finger on the button for the best visual.
So the Steamboat Hart match and the say the word for me. I'm not saying it. The look at the penetrative look at the Hart offices in New York City. I think that's kind of worth at least a one-time look. If you've never seen it, I would definitely go watch that.
Yeah, it's Brett's own expression when he sees himself playing with the action figures. He's got his glasses on, which is just as well. Otherwise, you'd be able to see it flashing through his mind. Is this what they've got me doing?
I really like that you said chubby Bret Hart because he is quite chunky. His face is very bloated.
Let's call him bulky and be polite.
Okay, bulky is politically correct. That's right.
Chunky. And where do we rank this tape then? So, is it a tape that, if we had the opportunity to, we would buy because it is so good? Is it one we should rent because it's pretty good? Is it one we should wait a few months and pick out of the bargain bin because it's not bad, not great, but it's got its moments? Or is it one we should only get hold of in order to wipe because it is so bad? Sean,
this is hard for me because there's one match on here I would absolutely want to buy. But if you look at it as a tape overall, I'd probably say rent because, it does have some historical stuff on here. You got the opening with the Bulldogs losing the belts angle. The Harts versus the Rougeaus is really good. You got the 4-star Brett match. You got the Hart Foundation thing, which, let's be honest with you, their New York offices. How many times are you going to rewind and watch that, right? So I'd probably say rent. But back in the time, if I had actually seen the Rougeau match or the Steamboat match, I probably would have bought it at the time. Does that make sense? But today I would say
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this was a very ambitious tape. It sought to cover a lot of ground in its 1 hour 40 minutes. Got a selection of matches, got a segment that tied all them together, tried to explain who the Hart Foundation were, told us the story of their tertiary member, squeezed all of that into, as I say, 100 minutes, all built around the Harts becoming tag team champions. I thought that was really quite admirable, actually, that this wasn't just necessarily a puff piece and just threw some random matches together. They really did think about the structure of it, and that is really good. However, in doing so, they probably overthought themselves a little bit and put in a few things here that we didn't really need and didn't move things along. As you say, that Wrestling Challenge 6-man didn't do a whole lot for anybody. The Danny Davis match had no reason to be there and ended up scoring the worst match category. We should have got more of the WrestleMania 3 match, really, because it is an important one. It's just little bits and pieces like that.
And we should have seen better Killer Bees and the Killer Bees and Bulldogs match. If we had better matches from them, 100% a buy for me.
Yes, just spluttered a bit towards the end, but I can never, ever be too harsh on a tape, which A, shows us just why the Hart Foundation clicked the way they did and why even now, 3 and a bit decades on, they are still venerated as one of the greatest of all time, and a real bit of buried treasure in the Brett versus Steamboat singles match. There aren't many of them out there, everybody, so take them while you can. So
I feel like if they had done this tape in 87 or later in 88, you might have gotten a lot more gems out of it because this is very early on, right? It's obviously the last match we saw was from February of 87 when they had just won the belt. So there was a lot of great stuff after that.
Yeah, I agree. Probably came along just a few months too early.
Yeah.
But the Bret Steamboat match is almost worth the price of admission alone, and that comes after a really interesting one against the Rougeau. So yeah.
So Rory, I need to ask you a question about the Bret Steamboat match.
Go ahead.
So if you were to context, and again, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, or I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but do you get what I'm saying about Bret versus Savage on Saturday Night Main Event, and Bret and Steamboat versus Savage? I mean, the different, and Bret Hart being that common denominator, where I feel like, for me, I feel like both matches were better than the one at Mania 7, or Mania, because I think it's the outside interference at Mania 3 just throws me out of the loop on that match so much.
No,
and I feel like these were much better, crisper, fluid matches for me.
Yeah, Steele just screws it up. He doesn't need to. He just doesn't need to be there. Savage Steamboat is a great match. I'd never pretend otherwise. It's safely made my GWE list.
And it should.
But it's not, sorry, Scott, it's not the greatest match of all time. The work is magnificent, but I don't like the visual pin in it. It's the wrong place for that one. And again, have I mentioned George Steele? I have twice already, but I'm going to give it the hat trick.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And even stuff like Savage going for the bell, and yes, obviously, I know the story. Even something like that is just a tad on the nose. But so much of the work they do together when they combine it was glorious then and it's glorious now. But for me, it's a very, very stand and applaud 4.5 rather than an all-time 5.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to take it off course. It's just that's what I've struggled with. Like when I was watching the Steamboat match tonight with Bret, I really struggled in my thought process with that. So I had to ask someone that has a really good point of view that most people don't consider to be a Sean take. So that's why I asked.
You're safe on this one, Sean.
Right,
at least on this one, you're in, I'd like to say, pretty good company.
Sure, gotcha. Okay, that's all you got to say.
And of course, I think I've got the history right here that Bret Steamboat could have been at WrestleMania 2. Is that the story?
Bret Steamboat at WrestleMania 2?
I'm sure I've heard that before. Instead, Bret ended up being dumped in the Battle Royal, and we had Steamboat versus Hercules. I'm sure I've heard that.
You know what? That's possible. Oh my God, man! If I had gotten that at WrestleMania 2, it probably would have been the best match on the whole card.
Yeah, you shoot WrestleMania 2 way up the Mania list stakes then.
It sure would. Wow.
Was it straight into the middle here?
Almost as good as, and we're getting off topic again, but almost as good as that Hogan Nikita Koloff rumor. Main event. But anyway.
If only. Yeah, there we go. So that is the tape. That is the Hart Foundation tape, yes. A strong rent for me, but of course with the wonders of the WWE Network, you can pick and choose. But make sure if you just watch anything from this, it is the now much mentioned, and rightly so, Bret versus Steamboat match. So Sean, there we go. That is the Hart Foundation tape, another one in the books. Thank you so much for joining me today and selecting this one for us to watch. Yeah, I love this. Like I said, the Hart Foundations was my first real great tag team that I loved, and it was a pleasure to watch this. And it's a pleasure to actually get to do this show. I've been wanting to do it for a while, so thanks for having me on. Pleasure is mine. Sean, you do, as mentioned earlier, have lots going on here on the Place to Be Nation Wrestling Network. Why don't you tell us where else you can be found and heard? Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at NWA Crock and Roll. I also do NWA Crock and Roll, the podcast. The latest episode that drops has you on it, where we looked at November 85 Part 2, where we definitely had some hidden gem matches that a lot of us had never seen before that absolutely shocked us. So make sure you go and listen to that. Crockett's fun in 85, and we're right around the corner from Starrcade 85, which is kind of like our season finale before we move into 1986 in December. So definitely give that a listen when that drops. Rory was an awesome guest and adds some really, how do I put it, gentlemanly perspective, and actually classes the joint up quite a bit. So, and then you can find me on Highway to the Impact Zone. Victory Roto, the Victory Roto 4 show should be dropping soon, which was a quite. It has Colin from your other pod, Special Relations, on, which was quite the show. We had quite the throwdown on that show, me and him. And then Chicken Salad. The latest episode, I believe, we'll be recording soon, will be WrestleMania 9 for WrestleMania season, so look forward to that one. And yeah, I mean, you can find me on a whole bunch of other pods, but those are the three that I'll talk about here to end this one for me. Yes, we haven't got all night. Correct. There's way too many, so I'm sorry. I've got to go to bed soon. That's fine. Yes. Yeah. Crock and Roll. It was a joy to be on that show, Sean. I'm looking forward to listening back to November 1985, Part 2, when that one drops. So as you say, Hidden Gems is putting it mildly there, some stuff which I would never, ever have come across.
Yeah, DiBiase, Ric Flair. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's amazing presentation. I'll say it here again, like I said on the show, 5-star presentation. Check that one out and listen to our thoughts on it. What else have I got going on in the podcast world? So here on the Place to Be Nation Network, in addition to Senior Video, I also have, as mentioned by Sean there, the show Special Relations with my chums from this side of the pond, Callum McDougall and Ben Locke. We recorded our latest show just a couple of hours ago. This was quite the come up from that one, let's say that. Another couple of new features will be waiting for you if you dare to broach all 2 hours of a special relation fun. Episode 16, would you believe? Yes, they've let us out for that long. All good fun. That one dropped a couple of days ago as you hear this, so do check that one out. Say I'm on the NWA Crock and Roll for November 85 parts 1 and 2, which was magnificent. And also outside of the realm of Place to Be Nation, but of course we're all friends here, you can hear me on the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast, where we look at pro wrestling from 20 years ago. I know, it's good stuff, this. WWF, ECW and WCW, but of course the death knell is very much ringing for the final two of those. We've got some very special shows coming up. We're looking at March 2001, a show looking at the demise of WCW specifically, a show looking at WWF's purchase of it, and then we will be doing a blow-by-blow, minute-by-minute account of the simulcast of the final Nitro and the Raw for WrestleMania 17, going into that one in minute detail, because there's a lot of other stuff which hasn't really been talked about there, which we find fascinating, and we're going to bring that all to you, in addition to our special show, and you'll love this one, Sean, dedicated to solely and purely everybody's favourite WrestleMania 17. So there you go.
No comment.
Even if you had made a comment, Sean, I just cut it. So there we go.
Of course you would, but we're not. Again, this is not the show to talk about those things.
No,
The show has
I've got my opportunity to talk about it. You've got yours coming up soon as well. So
I do indeed, correct.
Do check out the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. We will, for everybody who's been asking, by the way, who thought we might finish up at WrestleMania 17, nope, we will be continuing with WWF only for the next year. When we get to 2002, who knows, quite frankly. TNA, Ring of Honor, WWA, I'll leave that for others to decide. Well, it's going to be me. I'm deferring it for as long as I can, but WWF only from April onwards, with 1 or 2 special shows, we'll be with you. But that brings us to an end of this edition of Senior Video. One more time, Sean, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. I loved it.
I will be happy to have you back on. Anything else from the home video classic section you want to do in the future, just let me know, and I will get you on there ASAP, Sean. Always a treat.
I will have to do some research on which one I'd like to do, so stay tuned.
You know where to find me. So, Sean, thank you very much again for joining me, and thank you, everybody, for listening to this. Always so much fun doing this. Bit of a change of pace for me, really. It's a very relaxed podcast here on Senior Video. A leisurely stroll through the home video classic section is the best way to describe this. Join us again next month when we have another first-time guest on the show looking at a home video classic. But for now, I have been Rory McNamara, the Hart Foundation. I have Senior Video. I'll catch you later.